Hi, you guys, and welcome back to the podcast.
We are the Carwells.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Sarah, and we are, as you know, Airbnb interior designers and investors.
Hi, you guys, and welcome back to Catch Up with the Carwells. Today is a little bit of a different episode because it is just me. Sarah is not here with me today, but we do have a special guest, my husband, Tyler.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome, Tyler. So we are in hopefully the last week of wrapping up our first property that we own together. And I wanted to bring him on to kind of give you guys our backstory and then let him talk about his thoughts behind all of this, because I sort of drug him into this business with me. And of course, he's supportive and all of that. But I kind of just drug him into this process and forced him into it. So I feel like we should probably just start off with a backstory of how we met and how long we've been together, so you guys kind of understand us a little bit. So back in 2015, I was living in Grand Rapids. Tyler was going to Michigan State at the time, and our friends all went on a spring break trip. Neither of us went on this spring break trip, and they just so happened to meet on a beach in South Padre, Texas. And we were both in Michigan at the time. And they decided to continue hanging out after this trip because everybody was from Michigan. And so the weekend of one of my roommate's 21st birthday parties, I walk into my apartment and Tyler and his friends are all in my apartment.
And it was love at first sight for you?
Love at first sight, absolutely. No, we hung out that night, and then I was not looking for a relationship at the time, so it took about 5 months of Tyler making an effort and
pleading,
pursuing me he will say I led him on. It's a whole argument that we have in our friend group, in our families.
It's not an argument, it's the truth.
It's a running joke. But it took about 5 months, and we started dating in 2015. We got married in 2019. Mm-hmm. So we have been together for coming up on 8 years, and our 4-year wedding anniversary is actually tomorrow. Shockingly, as per usual, we will not be together for our anniversary because we are finishing up a property. Tyler's going to stay here and I have to go down to my parents' house. But that's kind of the backstory, quick story of how we got together. Did I miss any important details?
You got that you led me on? Okay.
Yeah. So okay. That's just going to be the thing forever. I was 21 years old, guys. I didn't know what I wanted at that point in time. But this is not a relationship podcast, so that is all you get from us. But I want to kind of run Tyler through some questions. Like I said, I kind of drug him into this industry and made him dive headfirst with me. For those of you that don't know, Tyler does still currently work a quote unquote 9 to 5. Excuse the background noise. Our dog is in the background. But he works a quote unquote 9 to 5. And I say that because he is the VP of international sales at his company. And so international companies work on a different time zone. So he's pretty much always on call. He does a lot of international travel, about 8 trips a year, I think is probably what it averages out to. So he is traveling a lot, gone a lot, and helping me when he can. So yeah, that's a little bit of the background. We can get into some questions unless you have anything that you would like to add about your job.
No, not really. No? Nothing I can think of.
Okay. So as you guys know from my backstory, I got into Airbnb by designing, and it was back in 2020. I didn't have a job at the time, and Tyler was solely supporting us. So that was a lot of pressure. But how did you feel when I told you that Sarah and I were starting a business in the Airbnb industry?
I think I was excited for you because, I mean, at that point you were, I think, working at the restaurant, and you didn't really care for it very much. It was long days, very hot in the summer in Texas. So I think I was really excited for you. Hold on, sorry. was very excited for you to get out and do something that was somewhat in a space that you wanted to be in and designing, and obviously I know that you want to start your own t-shirt business eventually, but that was kind of our maybe goal with this, was that this could be something that leads to that. But then I think you fell in love with it pretty quickly and realized this was probably going to be your and Sarah's career for a long time. So yeah, I was very excited for you.
Were you surprised at all about like, or have you been surprised at what it's turned into based on what we started with?
Yeah, I think when we um, ended up moving to out of the country, and everything had to go more remote, and then everything kind of started blowing up on social media for you guys. That started really going off, I think, and how quickly things started to grow from that. I think that was a bit surprising, just for the fact that once we moved, we thought things would kind of scale back a little bit, just with you and Sarah being time zones
A
away from
world away from each
yeah,
other.
just being 12 hours difference in time. And so I think in that aspect, I think it was a bit surprising how it grew, when really you would have thought it would have grown more when you guys were together. Now it has, now that we're back, and you guys are growing that, but it's been a fun journey.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, so when I think it was like 2 months into Sarah and I starting Carwell Design, Tyler got a phone call from his company that they wanted to offer him a position in Thailand to get his company's Thailand branch up and running. And we decided to not pass up on that opportunity. And so Sarah and I kind of had to pivot and figure out a way to make our business work while also supporting Tyler's career. And we ended up not being there as long as we thought we were going to, but our whole goal was obviously it's a cool experience to live in a foreign country, and Tyler's company, it was going to be really big for them to be over there. But we were going to be able to save up a lot of money and come back and be able to invest that money into properties and pay off student loans and all of these things. It was going to be a really good setup for us. And due to COVID and how things were working out in the world at that point in time, we ended up coming back after about 6 months. So it didn't necessarily work out in the way we thought it would, but I think me coming back probably was really good for my business to come
Yeah.
back and help more with Sarah growing and buying a property now and things like that. And Tyler's territory just kind of got expanded. So he wasn't just in Southeast Asia. Now he travels to Europe and the Middle East, and I don't know where else really. He does a lot of traveling, but yeah, that was kind of our plan at that point in time. And things ended up changing. So we moved back and we ended up buying a property here. But I want to talk about like your fears with real estate investing, because obviously this wasn't necessarily in your life plan, was to be investing in properties and turning them into Airbnbs, and there are a lot of fears that come with that. So what do you think are fears that come to mind when you think about real estate investing and Airbnb specifically?
I think for us, not knowing of Alpena really, and being not really being from this area or anywhere near here, I hadn't even heard of Alpena before I found the property. But just for the location, not for sure knowing that people are going to be up here and renting out places. I mean, there are motels and hotels and other vacation rentals, but I think that's probably the biggest fear, is not getting a large capacity of stayers, and occupancy rate. So I think that'd probably be my biggest fear with it. On the investment side, I'm not as too worried about it, because I know you and Sarah do your due diligence to make sure that the area, or I guess the property, is going to look the way it needs to pull people, that when they are on Airbnb, that it's going to pull up, be top of the page, have the great design, have all the amenities, So I'm not too worried about that aspect of investing in houses. Just more so for this first property, not knowing the location beforehand, I think was a little bit nerve wracking. But as we've lived up here and we've really enjoyed it, we can definitely see why a lot of people would come up here. And from people that live up here, we know it's a growing area, and they've continually started to put more stores in, and there's a Starbucks moved in right when we right when we bought the place. They opened like that day.
That was exciting.
So it's something that can definitely see this as a growing area, even though it's a little difficult to kind of get to because there's not a highway that runs through here. So it's either back roads or kind of a cool way to come up would be right along the coast of Lake Huron. So it's a fun drive, driving past a lot of people's vacation homes and seeing all the water along the way up and realizing it's a lake and not an ocean.
Yeah, that's usually a big surprise for people that are not from Michigan, is how much like the ocean the Great Lakes look. I think one of the fears that like we don't really talk about that much is the fact that we take all of my income and we put it into this property. Like over the past year, 100% of my income has gone into this property. And so Tyler definitely has more pressure on him because he supports our family. While I guess the way that Sarah always says it is Ethan makes the money, Sarah makes the money grow. And that's kind of the philosophy that we've kind of picked up over time and just how it's worked out based on the industry that we're in. And so I think that there's always this fear that because 100% of my income is going into this, we have to be able to live off of yours and hope that the property is going to work out the way that we analyzed it to and all of these things. So I think that that's probably a fear that we don't necessarily talk about as often.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I did a lot of research. The property's looking really good, so we're feeling more confident. But one thing that you said is you actually found this property. I did not, and there's a reason for that, but I want you to tell them the reason that you found this property and the location that we're in, that we ended up in, based on when we started looking.
So when we started this process, because I'm traveling a lot, my stipulation for Emily was that I needed to be at least at maximum 2 hours from an airport, from a major airport. So either Grand Rapids works well because they do a lot of regional flights, and so I can get to a major airport pretty easily, and the flights aren't badly priced. It's pretty reasonable. Or Detroit, or maybe even somewhere more southwest in Michigan, where I'd be even closer to Chicago than we were in Grand Rapids. So that was the stipulation I had for her for finding a lake house, because that's what we were wanting. And we first toured maybe 4 to 6 houses in the kind of northwest Detroit area, probably an hour outside of Detroit, hour and a half. Didn't really see anything that really jumped out at us as an option. There was one that Emily really liked, but it wasn't on the lake. It had an easement. If you don't know what that is, basically you're giving access to the lake between neighbors' properties, or if there's a property and then an open lot, your easement would be between those lots.
And you're essentially going through somebody's yard to get to the lake.
Even though you legally have the ability to do that, those neighbors usually don't like that. And in this particular circumstance, they were probably $1 million houses right across the street in the easement. And they had put their docks as close to their property line as they could, so that the easement would not be usable. So it would have been a huge headache. Even though Emily really liked the house, I had to kind of talk her out of dealing with this because it would be a huge issue.
There was already a lawsuit with the previous owners kind of about this situation. So we would have already been walking into a tense situation.
It wouldn't even have been something that I would have offered or told stayers about, that they could use area,
Yes,
because
yeah.
it would have been, one, an issue with the neighbors in general, but two, random people on a weekly basis going and using that area would have even further been an issue. So trying to stay out of neighbors' ways, probably a good scenario.
Yeah.
So after we looked at those properties, we just didn't really see anything we liked enough to put an offer on. Um, and I think maybe a week or two later, I was searching on Zillow, and I started expanding my search without telling Emily. And I started looking a little bit more further north and came across this property in Alpena. It had just been listed maybe a day or two prior, and showed Emily. We both fell in love with the living room with the big windows, looking out over the channel going into Lake Huron, and we decided to jump on it. We called, set up a visit, and I think we put an offer in that next week or a couple days later, and
Yeah.
got accepted a couple days later after that. After some back and forth a little bit with the owners, the previous owners. So all in all, for our first property, it was pretty seamless. We were both very surprised at kind of how quickly it all happened. Obviously, this was mid to late 2022. So we knew a lot of people that were trying to buy houses and just kept getting outbid.
Yeah, I think it was September
Yeah.
when we finally closed.
Yeah. So we got very lucky. We're
Yeah.
very fortunate. And as well, for the Airbnb restrictions up here, for Alpena, and us being in Alpena Township, it's very lax. They don't necessarily have anything. I think they have one permit that you can apply for, but I think it lasts for 3 or 5 years, something like that. And
Yeah, and that's in the city of Alpena. It's so funny. We talk about regulations all the time and how like things are changing, and we are definitely not anti-regulation. Regulations in a lot of places are really good. It means that you have a stable business, that you're not going to get the rug pulled out from under you, that hopefully good hosts are in the area because they went through the proper channels to get their listing up and running. But we happen to be one street down from Alpena City, and we're in Alpena Township, and there is absolutely no regulation. I called the building and zoning guy on his personal cell phone because that's all they gave me when I called the township, and he said, as long as you pay your property taxes and your mortgage, I don't give a shit what you do with your property. So that's super convenient. I was genuinely shocked at the location of this property and just the price that it was at, because it's on a channel going into a Great Lake. I expected it to be significantly pricier, but this house was built in the 1970s. It's a very
yeah, it's kind of a
unique style of home, I
yeah,
would say.
it's an interesting kind of area. So what we've been told is that they developed this area, I don't know, probably around that time in the 70s, and they dredged out all these channels, to build some neighborhoods, and then it kind of slowly started to grow after that. They actually did a second area with channels, but they ended up being too much of a wetland, so they couldn't build over there. But when we say channel into Lake Huron, I mean, it's not like we got a long way to go. It's fairly close.
Yeah,
I mean,
we can see Lake Huron
probably
from the house.
kayaking, maybe 5 minutes paddle to into Thunder Bay. So it's definitely nice, and kind of the aspect with what I liked about being on the lake here is that, one, because you're in Thunder Bay in Lake Huron, the weather's a little bit better for the wind, and the waves aren't quite as bad being in the bay. And then as well, even further than that, being in the channel, a lot of that is further blocked. So there's really no issue in the channels with wind or having
Yeah, you get all
wakes or anything.
the lake benefits without necessarily having to deal with that direct lake wind.
Yeah.
But Yeah, so this house was built in the 70s and it's a very unique style of home, I would say. We've also been told. So, our handyman happens to be the guy who he's the nephew of the people who used to own this property. And so, we've been able to ask him a lot of questions, which is so nice. But the guy who built this house, he bought up a bunch of the land when they developed it. And he thought he was coming up with some fancy new modern style of home, and so it's an odd layout, that not it doesn't necessarily function 100% of the time like a normal home would. I don't know, it's just a little odd, but it works for what we need it to. But with it being built in the 70s, there was a lot of things that we needed to update. There was no washer and dryer, there is no AC, so we've added an AC unit. We're going to be adding mini splits. It's baseboard heating. There was carpet in almost the entire home, so it was definitely
All the rooms were painted different colors.
Every room was painted a different color. It's very interesting to see like different doorknobs on every single door. The ceilings in the closets are all different. Even the baseboard heating, some of them are different, like types in each room. So you can tell it was like kind of a slapped together property, that definitely needed some updates. So we closed on the house at the end of September, and we were currently still living in Grand Rapids at that point in time. And so we slowly moved up over the month of October, and then we moved in full time in November. And since November, we have been putting new things in this property, new flooring, painting every single surface, it feels like. Adding a washer and dryer. We changed the hookup for the washer and dryer, well, for the dryer to be a gas hookup. So there was definitely a lot of updates that needed to happen to this house. But because the price was so good, in my opinion, for the location, I'll just say we bought the house for $240,000. And because we moved into it for a year, we were able to get a primary home loan and only put 3% down, which is amazing. So we've been able to put a lot of money into this property. I was saying this in a call that I had on Monday, and I still have receipts from this week that I need to put into my spreadsheet. But all in all, I think we're sitting at about $74,000 put into this property, and that includes the cost of tools that we've purchased to do the work ourselves and things like that. So pretty good, considering we also purchased a hot tub. We purchased a brand new washer and dryer. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with the house right now as far as what we've spent on it. And ideally, in the next week, it will be 100% ready to list. But I want to talk about how it's been for you helping with this process. Like, is it more work or less work than you thought it would be? What parts of the process did you like versus what you've hated?
Well, when we started this, I told you this is your project, so that in my free time, it's not my free time to work. It's your project, since this is your industry. So definitely a lot more work than I was expecting.
Wants to reap all the rewards and do none of the work.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I think the worst part was just kind of the waiting for like the flooring to be done. That was a huge thing we had to wait on. We couldn't do a lot of the work until that was done. So since that happened at the end of June, things have really started to pick up. Most of our nights and weekends are spent doing something on the house. And then now that we're starting to finish everything up, it's been haven't had much free time at all to do anything. But I mean, it's a good thing though. Once we put it up, hopefully with Federico running the property, it'll kind of help us back off, and we'll have a little bit more time to focus on just us when
Yeah.
we move back down state. So um, I don't know that I would say I'm surprised at the amount of work. Um, I think I was expecting there'd be quite a bit of work because there was a lot that had to be changed in the property.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it was good that we had Steve to help us a lot with this property and do a lot of changes and things that I definitely didn't want to do, like get under the crawl space and mess with plumbing and then the gas line for the dryer and all of that. So it was nice having him around for that because my parents still live in Texas. So it's something that I'm sure my dad would love to help us with, and he'd be more than glad to do it. And he knows how to do all that stuff. It's just a lot harder for him to come up here and help. But nice thing is they're coming up this weekend to help us finish the last touches and a little bit with some privacy fences. And so I'm excited about that. But I think it was nice the time we had to do it all. I think ideally we could have done it quicker. But like I said, it was the flooring that really took the longest to set up, and probably could have had it done sooner, but you didn't want it done while I was traveling. So
You also didn't want it done while you were traveling.
Well, yeah, I didn't want you here by yourself with the dog.
We also had to move all of our furniture out of the house because since we lived here, we had all of our personal furniture in the house, and so we had to move all of that out while they were doing the flooring. And I know that it kind of pushed off us making money, but I was just in no rush to get especially our first property together done. I wanted to be able to go through the process and understand, like, I've done this for other people, but doing it for myself, it feels different. And so I wanted to make sure that I was taking the time to make all the decisions that I wanted to make and not feel rushed. I think it's funny, we've had your parents and my parents come up the past couple of weekends, and they've been super, super helpful. That is a difference between my investing and Sarah's investing. Is Sarah's dad was a building trades instructor, so she gets to tap into that often. I've tried to rope John into helping me, but
come help us, John.
The poor man, he's retired, so I definitely don't blame him for not coming to help. But it's finding people to do all of those jobs that we have to hire out is a little bit harder, and then doing a lot of the work ourselves. And my parents, and your mom specifically, has said this a few times. She's like, this is a lot of work. A lot goes into these things to get them up and running. And so I think it's their first experience seeing exactly how much goes into it, and they're understanding how much work goes into it now as well. And so I'm really glad that we had the full year to take our time and do it. And I'm still working in Carwells, you're still working your 9 to 5, and so it made it, even though I'm still stressed out about it because it's a lot of money putting to a home.
You don't show it.
I think it was a lot better taking the time and not rushing through the process. I know a lot of people, once you get your systems down, you can kind of do it at a quicker pace. But for this first one, I'm really glad that we had the time to do it. But did you have a favorite part of being able to do it, or like a favorite thing that looks different from before and after?
I think the flooring. I mean, it just makes such a huge difference going from carpet to luxury vinyl plank.
Oh yeah.
It just really kind of brings the property to life. And then obviously all the paint and everything makes a huge difference, and the feel of the property really starting to get it to feel more like the design choice that you went with the lodge feel. So that was probably, the flooring was probably the best part that I've seen. But I think now that we have all of our furniture out and really started to see with the furniture that you purchased 4 months ago that's been sitting in the garage, getting coated with spiders, really seeing the property and your design come to life has been fun as well. Because I know you were stressing because you couldn't imagine it the way it was going to be with all of our stuff in here.
Hard to see.
So once the flooring went in and we were able to move our stuff out, and start putting together the other furniture. That's been really fun to see. Least fun is putting together furniture. I hate it so much.
Yeah, I ended up putting together a lot of the
Hate it
furniture.
so much.
Allen wrenches are the bane of my existence. That and making bunk beds. I'm realizing making a bunk bed is not fun at all. But yeah, the before and after is turning out really cool. It is hard to see what it's actually going to look like when your furniture is in the space and not the furniture that I picked out. But
yeah, I think we had a good idea of what we could turn it into when we bought the place and it was empty, and we had a good idea of what we wanted to do. And then once all of our furniture moved in, it felt more like our home than our property that we were going to turn into a short-term rental. So it was a little less, well, I don't want to work as hard because I'm comfortable and
yeah, you
all of our stuff is here.
get used to it.
So I think for our next properties, it just makes sense that we don't move into it. I don't want to.
Yeah,
I'm sick of
the
moving.
type of loan that we would get would have to be different.
Yeah,
but
I'm sick of moving and packing up boxes and unpacking boxes. And
yeah, we added it all up, and in the 8 years that we've been together, we've moved collectively 12 times, and that's a lot. And it's probably not going to be the last time we move, so it definitely is a lot. I will say, you mentioned the flooring being a big change. It is a huge change. I don't know if people give that one thing enough credit in your property to change, especially if you're going to be pet friendly, because so the carpet that had been here, the previous owners had German shepherds, and then we have 2 cats and we have a Dalmatian who sheds a lot. And
just a little bit.
To the day that before the carpet was being taken out, I was vacuuming, and you can very clearly tell the difference between German Shepherd hair and Dalmatian hair. And there was still German Shepherd hair coming out of the carpet. And we had lived in the property from November to June at that point. So if you are going to have a pet friendly property, there's no way to avoid allergens in a pet friendly property. It's just not possible, because there's going to be a animal hair probably somewhere in the property, no matter how much you deep clean. That's just not realistic. But taking out the carpet makes a huge difference for the cleanliness of your property if you are going to be pet friendly. So absolutely recommend switching to luxury vinyl plank. And
yeah, the hair's still going to be there, but now you can see it.
Yeah, but like cleaning it up is easier. Like pulling it out of carpet is almost impossible to get all of it. And so, yeah, like I said, after that many months of living here, we're still pulling the German Shepherd hair out of the carpet. So
I just still don't understand how he has any hair, because
our dog,
there's so much everywhere.
It's amazing how much Dalmatians shed. When we were doing our application, side note, outside of Airbnb, when we were doing our application to get our Dalmatian, it said, like, are you aware the Dalmatian shed? And I knew that. I've been researching these dogs for years. It's my dream dog. I wasn't prepared for how much he sheds. And I wear all black most of the time, so I'm always covered in his hair, which is fine. I love him so much, and I don't think dog hair is that big of a deal, but your guests probably will. So that is definitely something that you want to consider. But as we're wrapping up, I have one final question for you.
We're almost done.
I know. What are your personal investing goals? Like, think of number of properties, types of properties. Like, what do you want to get out of investing in real estate?
Lots and lots of money.
Okay.
I think since I was in college at Michigan State, I always go green, by the way.
Go white.
Yeah, thank you. It's a cult, I think.
It is.
If I'm self-aware, is it still a cult?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I always like the idea of maybe owning 1 or 2 houses in East Lansing that we can rent out to students, and eventually, if we have kids and when they go to Michigan State, and not if they go to Michigan State.
When they
When
go
they
to
go to
Michigan
Michigan
State,
State,
no option.
they would be able to live there, but it also could be a job for them to manage the property when they're living there. So I think that's something that my parents threw around a little bit, and they just never pulled the trigger on. I think they know now, they wish they would have, but they didn't end up doing that. And so it's something that I've wanted to do. So in the future, hopefully in the near future, we'll be able to do that. And because I just love going back there so much too, because we have season tickets to the football games. I would love to get season tickets to basketball games. It's just a lot more games and a lot more travel during the week, because games are Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays. So that's probably one of them that I would love to maybe see in the future, is to own something in Michigan State campus somewhere. And the other, I think for me, I don't know that the number of properties really matters to me too much. I've always have always wanted to have something in the mountains somewhere, preferably like a ski in, ski out area in the mountains. So just ease of access to any ski resort, really. I don't know, something in Montana or Colorado, or bless you, anything like that.
You don't want to go to the mountains in Michigan?
Yeah, the mountains in Michigan.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen those TikToks where they'll say like, they'll be like, this is like up north Michigan, and then it's showing pictures of giant mountains and then trying to throw people off that there's all of that here.
Oh yeah.
Or they'll show like, this is Galveston Island, and it's like pictures of Hawaii, or Galveston Beach and Galveston Beach, and
they do not look the same.
Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely what it looks like here. There's just mountains everywhere.
Mountains everywhere.
Yeah. That's always what I've said. I always said that I would never move back to Michigan unless they put a mountain here, and that was never going to happen. And then somehow I moved back to Michigan. There's still not a mountain here, so yeah, that's unfortunate. But yeah, that's one that I would love to have in the future. Would be something that's more for me personally that I would want to use.
More of a lifestyle type one,
and one that I would want to use quite a bit. But unfortunately, when I would want to use it would be the time that you would make the most money from it during ski season.
That means it's a down the road, we're not worried about cash flow kind of investment. Yeah.
And then I know we've kind of talked about it. It doesn't necessarily something that is super feasible just because of the investment side of it and investing abroad, but I love going to Scotland so much, and I know when we went, you really enjoyed it, and I'd love to have something in the Highlands, even if we're not renting it out, just something that's ours in Scotland, or even the Isle of Man, where I have some family, just something different. I would love to be able to do a short-term rental with it, or somewhere that we go for a couple months out of the year, or even an apartment or a flat in Edinburgh as well. That would be probably my two, would be something in Edinburgh, and then a house in the Highlands. Wouldn't have to be very big.
Yeah. But at least some of our dreams overlap, because it would get expensive if our dream investing properties were different. I'm not big on skiing. If you guys saw my Instagram from last December, the Carwell Christmas party, I fell my first time skiing and got a major bruise, pretty much the entire backside of my thigh. So not a ski girl, but I do love those types of towns. So I can spend all day in a lodge while you're skiing. But yeah,
you can
it's
just stay
nice
in the property. Like those ski in, ski out ones are nice, because you can just, you can stay in.
It's nice to have dreams that are
ski down.
more lifestyle type plays, because obviously, like right now, our main priority is cash flow and being able to support ourselves and things like that. But eventually, hopefully, it becomes more of a lifestyle thing where we still rent them out because that's what makes sense, but we're able to use them in a way that we want to as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not a big tropical person though, so I think all of our dream places are more in colder, rainier areas.
Though I do like the beach, but that's okay.
I'm too pasty for the beach. Okay. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to give to the audience? Anything you want to say?
Not that I can think of.
Okay.
Was I supposed to have some profound thing that I needed to say to come up with some quote to leave this
No.
all with?
No, but I want to say that I think that the reason that Sarah and I like bringing Tyler and Ethan onto the podcast and being able to talk to you guys about our journeys together is we really emphasize couples being aligned with these investments. It's not a small amount of money that you're putting into these properties. So even if your partner is not the person who's doing the work with you, or if they're in a 9 to 5 and they aren't able to help with the physical aspect of it a lot of the time, being aligned in what your goals are and the fact that these are investments and understanding what goes into them is really, really important. And they're not always on board at the beginning. I think Tyler was not necessarily, not that he wasn't on board, it was just he didn't understand the draw to an industry like this, and so it took a little bit of convincing at the beginning. But I think that we're super aligned now on exactly what we want this to do for our lives, and I think that that's really important for couples to sit down and have those conversations. So that's why we like to bring them on. So thank you
You're
for
welcome.
coming on.
You're
And
welcome, world.
yeah, no, Ethan was excited. He thought he was going to get famous off of his episode. What do you think? Think you're going to get famous off of yours?
I already had my minute of
Yeah,
fame.
you did. Well, thank you guys as always for listening. I know there wasn't a horror story on this episode, but let's cross our fingers that the horror stories for this property are few and far between. Let's put those vibes out there. And thanks again for listening / watching if you're watching on YouTube. And we will catch you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.